A couple of weeks ago I put out a video comparing colour and black and white for flat light photography. I've got to be honest, I didn't do a great job on the black and white part of it. I made a mistake, and it's a mistake that I keep making with my black and white images. So I thought I'd do a video about it. I hope you'll enjoy it. If you do and you're new here, don't forget to hit subscribe before you go. Hi everyone, thanks for joining me. And I've got to be honest, this is not the video I had planned for this week, but I actually came down with a bug a little while ago, and I haven't actually been able to go out for quite some time. In fact, right now is about the first time I've even felt like doing an in-office thing rather than, just being sort of curled up on the sofa with the laptop. But I'm hoping that I'm getting better now, and maybe next week I might be able to get out and do some proper in the field type photography. But what I decided to do today, rather than not putting a video out at all, was just revisit these black and white images that I shared in my video that came out a couple of weeks ago. And there's a mistake that I keep making with my black and white images, and I made it in this one, and I'm going to use one of the images to show the example of the mistake that I'm making and why I think I'm making it. So this is one of the images that I put out in that video. It's a composition that I think works pretty well, but it's kind of flat. Now, what actually happened was after a period of time of seeing this image on the screen, I actually realized the mistake that I'd made, and I re-edited the image into this one. Now, all I've done with this image is I've added contrast. I'd added some global contrast by using the black sliders, the white sliders, also by using the contrast slider and the tone curve. And I also added some selective contrast by darkening and boosting contrast in the sky. And it's a much, much stronger image. So the question is, why didn't I do that in the first place? Why did I put out an image which didn't have enough contrast in to be interesting? And I think the answer comes from the fact that historically I was almost solely a colour photographer. I almost never used to do black and white up until a few years ago. And even now, the majority of the images that I do are colour. And when I approach editing, I think I approach it with the colour mindset. So I'm going to put up now the colour version of the image that I shared in the video. This is the colour image, and this follows the approach that I normally like to do with my photo editing, in that I aim for subtlety, and I aim to try to recreate the scene as I remember it. Now obviously this is a long exposure, so there are definitely some differences to the scene as I remember it, but in terms of tonal range, colour, etc., it kind of matches my memory of how I saw the scene and how I wanted to represent it. And it all comes down to the fact that I aim for gentle, subtle adjustments in Lightroom or Photoshop. And in fact, when I've advised people on doing adjustments in Lightroom or Photoshop or in any other software, I always advise people to follow what I call the rule of halves. So what I mean by that is, if I'm editing an image and I want to add contrast, what I'll do is I'll move the slider across to whatever I think looks about right on the image, and then I bring it back by half. So if I dial it across thinking that contrast set at 40 looks good, I'll bring it back to 20. And what I find is that tends to give me a better result, because you almost always, or at least I do, almost always over adjust things in the first place. Now, I must admit, I don't always follow that particular rule, because I've kind of got used to doing the rule of halves, if you like, in the first place. But that's what I do. I tend to go for more subtle adjustments to try to keep the color images looking natural, because if you over contrast, over vibrance, over saturate, over adjust anything in a color image, it very quickly starts to look wrong. And that's because we see the world in color, so we have an expectation of what the scene should look like in color. Now, in the video that I put out last week, but I actually shot 2 weeks ago, where I was talking about abstracts, I said one of the things about abstracts is you can kind of go a bit mad in the editing because there's no frame of reference for what an abstract should look like. But if you're doing an ordinary landscape scene, there is a frame of reference, both for me, because I was there, and for anybody else viewing it. So I always tend to go for that subtlety rather than going over the top. That doesn't mean to say I don't add vibrance and saturation, and the scene in this image is almost certainly a little bit more vibrant and a little bit more saturated than was actually the case when I was there. So what would happen if I applied the kind of contrast that I did to the second version of the black and white to the color image? Well, it very quickly starts to look bad. Now, all I've done here is applied the same contrast adjustments to the color image that I did to that second version of the black and white, and it looks horrible. It immediately looks fake, it looks wrong, it looks overcooked. Now, yeah, I can adjust this a bit. I could go in and bring down the vibrance and saturation to try and take out some of that effect. So it might look something like this. But to me, that still doesn't look right. The contrast is just too heavy. It looks crunchy, grungy. I don't know how really to explain it, but it just doesn't look realistic to me compared to the original color version. And in fact, what I could do is put both of those up side by side like this. And I think that the original color version without the extra contrast looks much, much better. However, if I then take the two black and white versions and put those up side by side, I think there's no doubt that the more contrasty version looks better. It has more punch. And because it's black and white, and because we don't see the world in black and white, then it doesn't look wrong, because it doesn't look like the real world anyway. It looks like an artistic piece rather than a real life piece, because it's black and white. Now, the good news is this is a mistake I keep making in editing and post-processing, not in the actual shooting of an image in the field. So because it's a post-processing error, I can fix it by just going back and re-editing the image. But what's frustrating is I keep putting images out in the videos where I've made the mistake. And what that comes down to basically is I'm rushing my video production too much. Ever since probably March or April last year, I've been kind of pushing videos, sometimes creating a video, shooting it on a Thursday, editing it and uploading it on the Friday and Saturday to go out on a Saturday evening. So there's not that time for me to let an image or images rest and then go back and review them with fresh eyes and see if I need to do something different. And of course, typically in the last few weeks, I tried to get a bit ahead of the game by shooting 2 videos. I actually got ahead by almost 3 videos. So I should have been in a position where I could have taken my time a little bit more. And then I got this bug, which means I haven't been out for the best part of 2 weeks, or actually for 2 weeks. And so, of course, now once again, I am going to be hand to mouth on videos again. But nevertheless, I'm going to try to catch up over the next couple of weeks, maybe get 2 or 3 videos ahead, so that I have the time to properly review the images before they go into the video, before they go out and people see them, rather than actually putting images out there which perhaps don't do justice to themselves because I haven't done the right thing in the editing process. Anyway, I thought I'd share that with you today. It's a bit of self-reflection and hopefully better than not putting out a video at all. I've got a couple of things planned coming up. One of them is a bit of a gear review because I've got a bag to review, which is not really for landscape photography, but maybe suits the kind of photography I do when I go on these walks, maybe sort of urban stuff as well. So that will be coming up in the next few weeks, and hopefully maybe a couple of new locations as well. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this one, and I hope the insight into maybe how things can go wrong is useful in maybe considering your own stuff. I'm hoping to be in the field for the next one, so until then, thank you very much for watching. Bye.